This is Mary Lewis at A Tiny Homestead, the podcast comprised entirely of conversations with homesteaders, cottage food producers, and crafters. If you're enjoying this podcast, please like, subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a comment. Thank you. Today I'm talking with Elm at the Witch's Garden. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing just fine. Glad to be with you.
Glad to be with you too. You said Tennessee is where you are, right?
That's right. The west end of the state, about an hour outside of Memphis.
Okay. And is it warm there today?
It's warming up. We got incredible snow. I haven't seen it like this since we moved here, 16 years ago. We had a solid 8 inches and it was beautiful. No ice, just, felt like Christmas all over again.
Well, I'm in Minnesota and you have gotten more snow this winter than we have, which is unheard of. I'm so confused by Mother Nature this winter and last winter. Last winter, I think we got maybe a foot total for the entire season. So I don't know what's up with Mother Nature, but she's having a lot of fun with us, I think.
Personally, I think she's a little confused with us as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's been true since humans started, but, it's a thing. All right, so tell me about yourself and what you do at the Witch's Garden.
Sure. We've been in business for about 2 years. The head of the business, shall we say, is Sanctuary Apothecary. So I have a little apothecary shop out here, and I'm beginning to do workshops and tours and that kind of thing. The Witch's Garden started as our flagship subscription service. So 4 times or 8 times a year on a seasonal cycle, we send out boxes of ritual and inner work items. So I'm from a pagan tradition, a European pagan background, and title it The Witch's Garden, but we're really at a point where we're working with energy healers. We're working with yogis and those with meditation backgrounds. So, I love our community. It's really very party colored, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Awesome. So I wanted to talk to you because I tend to identify as pagan, if anything, because I'm not Christian. Although people who know me tell me I'm the most Christian, non-Christian person they know.
I have a lot of that myself.
And I take that as a huge compliment because I try really hard to be kind and helpful and do good in the world. And if that's what they're getting from me, that's what I'm going for. But
that's fantastic. Yes.
But I also I feel like pagan is so much nature and being in the world and in the moment. And that's how I am with everything. So part of the reason I want to talk to you is because I saw that you grow a lot of the things that you use to make the things that you sell. And I'm all about growing things. So what do you grow?
So for the last several years, we've been building out beds of herbs around the house, in the garden, and now across the landscape. So we started, close to 17 years ago as a CSA. And we live in a home that's been in my husband's family for 7 generations now. My daughter is number 7. And we started with a CSA. So we had the huge market garden and grew vegetables for several years and sold at local farmers markets, and then also did a subscription service there that helped us, understand what our costs were going to be for a whole growing season, understand what we could grow, and know that we had an audience for it, know that we had families to deliver it to. And that was really satisfying, but it was an incredible amount of work for 2 people. We both, over the years, have taken on day jobs in other places because keeping up a house that was built in 1835 takes a lot of income. So in my day job, I work in tech, and it just became a little too much. Over the years, we've really started learning how to work with the landscape here. We both have a background in anthropology and are fascinated by those, intersections with people and culture that have existed for as long as we've walked upright. The landscape is a part of us to our core, and that environment impacts every piece of who we are. This is the longest I've ever lived anywhere. And in that time, we've started a relationship with the land. We've really gotten to know it. Historically, the land in West Tennessee has changed so very much. We're at a point where big agriculture has caused a lot of environmental issues, but it's also changed the fauna and flora here. So we've, I guess, pivoted, we've shifted our focus, we've found our passion, and we're working hard to turn probably the 250 acres of this historic farm back into a native prairie and the landscape as it would have looked 300-400 years ago. So, you know, there's trillium in the woods. There are heel-all and henbit and dead nettle everywhere. Heel-all and dead nettle are actually, in my head, they're synonyms. Although some people say heel-all is a different plant, so I've got to clarify myself. Mm-hmm. But now we're fully into herbs. We will probably 4 or 5 times a year will split and dig up and pot several things from across the landscape. We still have several things in containers that we're growing out till they're a little larger. And we'll do plant sales just kind of to help us support that shift that we're trying to make on the land. And right now, the larger family is still renting out the agricultural land to larger scale farmers. Our long-term goal is to recover all that land to native prairie and pasture. So in order to support that, we've been building beds. Oh gosh. I'm so glad that we're moving away from the row crop style classic, garden that we've gotten used to seeing, because most of our land still really wants to be hayfield. Uh-huh. So the herbs that we focus on are ground covers, are big, beautiful, bushy herbs that will keep the local. Some of the problems that we have are with grasses that have come in and taken over. So things like Bermuda grass, sedge are everywhere, and we're figuring out what can outcompete them. So some of those are things like yarrow and rue have both done very well here, and they're both excellent medicinal and magical herbs. We are overflowing with, I think we're up to 26 different kinds of mint, each of which can have their own purposes. We are in love with blackberries and strawberries. We've been building out strawberry beds for years. And again, those can be dried. So everything that we do is focused toward the native landscape and plants that we know will thrive here naturally and that are glad to be home. And 2, on items that have either medicinal or magical uses or both. And it's amazing what a large variety of those there are. So the landscape's becoming more and more varied over time, and it's just incredibly satisfying. And honestly, so much easier to maintain.
Yes, because you're working with nature, not against it.
Exactly.
Okay, you mentioned rue, and every time I hear the word rue, I am reminded that I think that it's used for a blue-colored dye. Is that correct?
Rue is not one that I know of in that capacity, maybe partly because the varieties that I have here are yellow flowered.
Okay.
There is also an African rue, which is not the same plant. It's far more poisonous. Uh-huh. That may be a plant dye, but I wouldn't know. Okay. The blues, what I use for blues are blue pea flower, which I can get locally. Mm-hmm. And it makes a lovely, gorgeous blue dye that I use in inks.
Okay. A friend of mine was asking me years ago about rue, and mm-hmm. he was sure that it was used to make a blue dye. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question. And Google probably knows more than I do. So I'm going to have to go look it up to find out again. Um,
I'm sorry, I can't answer that one.
no, that's okay. So here's the thing with magic and quote unquote witches. I I have a couple things about this. Number one, I have traced my ancestry back on my dad's mom's side to John Proctor, the first man who was accused, tried, and hung for witchcraft in Salem during the Salem witch trials. And
Oh,
so
fascinating.
I have a very special place in my heart regarding this whole witchcraft thing because I feel like I have a family line directly back to it. And someone asked me one time how I define magic. And number one, I had to find out from them if they meant like sleight of hand magic or if they meant magic magic. And they meant magic magic. And I said, honestly, I said, I think that magic is science and raised awareness and intent all blended together. And they were like, so magic to you isn't something that just is a supernatural thing. And I said, no. I said, it's all energy. I said, energy never dies, it just changes form. And so if you can take what you know to be proven true and direct that energy to the result you want, then that's magic. And they were like, oh, oh. And they had a whole new concept of how to think about it. And so when people talk about witches and it's a derogatory term, I just have to giggle because I'm like, really that's not correct. And and I'm always saying that nature is magic. I have said the word magic more in the last year and a half doing this podcast than I think I have in my whole life. So what's your take on all of that?
I tend to agree with you completely, and I think that it is a capacity that every human has. I think it's largely driven by intent, and that intent is what creates the energy that you're talking about. So that comes with a regular practice, and part of what makes magic magic is ritual is a way to harness and guide our energies and to speak to parts of our brains and our hearts that aren't necessarily influenced by words, but by sense or emotions or, general impressions. When you put together, let's say you're working on an herb bag, and I'm going to pick 3 different herbs that have to do with this particular intent. I'm doing the research. I'm spending time with each of those herbs, picking and crafting. I'm spending time in, a sacred candlelit space that makes my inner self feel settled and connected.
Uh-huh.
And that all ties that intent to me and to the larger world around me. And it's also going to make me pay more attention to that thing that I'm trying to draw into my life and do the work that comes with drawing that thing into my life. So it's not as woo-woo as people make it out to be, but it's also incredibly mysterious and beautiful in the way that it connects us to something that's so much greater than ourselves.
Yes, and I'm gonna even venture further. The surprise that comes with this. If you're trying to do something and you do the research and you pull everything together and the energy's right and it works.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always just astounded when something actually comes together and works the way I wanted it to work.
There's always that delightful surprise. And then what is so powerful about that is the next time you do it, you have more faith and confidence in both yourself and in the universe that you are supported and held, and you're going to find what you need. And the more you can live in that space, strangely, the more things seem to work out. I do think we kind of have a habit of living in a space that puts our attention on the things we don't have, especially with the 24-hour news cycle where it is these days. The things that are scary in the world take up an incredible part of our brains.
Mm-hmm.
And magic helps us return to ourselves and to our space and to the present moment, where we can kind of discover that right here, right now, things are pretty good. And that has power.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm always reminding myself, like constantly, that the only moment I have is now. So what am I going to do now? Because the next moment isn't guaranteed. I might die in the next 10 minutes and no one will even know that I'm gone yet. So you've got to be in the moment. You've got to plan for the future, but you've got to live in the moment, I think.
That's very right. And another piece of that mindset that becomes so powerful, and something that I try to talk about when I can, is that death loses its power when you are comfortable with that assessment. The way that you just phrased things,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not guaranteed my next moment. That becomes almost a companionable thing. I'm aware of it. It's a thing that could happen. It doesn't have to scare me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the pagan traditions are phenomenally good at helping us face those inner fears. And as we do that work on ourselves, our magic gets stronger, and our comfort, our stability, our even happiness, our presence in the world changes. And we become less fear-based. I do believe we live with less fear. We're in land that we love. We're in a home that we love. We have a strong family. And all of that is due in large part to the way we choose to live our lives.
Yes, exactly. Um, I feel like every time I talk to someone who's not like specifically a homesteader or a cottage food producer or a crafter, I find myself very, very deep in the weeds, and it makes me really, really think about what I'm saying. And and I don't know, I'm really happy with my life. Like, I'm 55. I've raised 4 kids. They're all great people. We live in a home we love. We have like 3 acres that we love. We have a dog we love. We have barn cats we love. And and our whole life in the last 4 years has just been this bubble of building the thing we want to build. And I feel like so many people are building lives that are about things, about money or about the boat or the mansion or whatever. And it doesn't have to be that big. You can be exceedingly happy and not have all these big, huge dollar signs attached to it.
You're very right. And I do think a steady practice of any kind that leads you back toward the natural world leads you to that understanding.
Hmm.
We're made to be in a natural space. And in my husband's world, he's an anthropology professor. There's a lot that's problematic about this divide between human space and quote unquote natural space. It, the whole world is nature. We are a human animal.
Hmm.
Trying to separate that, I think that viewpoint has caused far more problems than it's helped.
Yes. And I actually that what you just said has actually been on my mind a lot over the last 6 months, that people are animals. We are mammals. We're no different than the dog or the horse. I mean, we are, but we're all mammals. And the prime directive for every mammal ever produced by nature is to survive long enough to procreate. That's it. And so the big difference between us and other mammals is that most mammals only know now. They're not planning for 20 years down the road like humans do. That's the big difference between us and the horse or the dog or the cat. And so in some ways that's really wonderful. In other ways it really holds us back as living beings.
It can get in the way a little bit.
Yeah.
That consciousness, though, that great mystery in the world is what makes us unique. Though there are so many animals that have consciousness and that may even have a concept of self-consciousness. But I deeply believe that there is a spark in each of us that is divine. I believe that too of basically everything in the world. But I think it's a matter of degree. And I would say that we are far more than just animals. The greater self that's accessible to us, I don't know that I would say is accessible to everyone, every being. The other piece that I wanted to kind of call out that I heard you say a few minutes ago was talking to somebody who's not truly a homesteader.
Yes.
And we're definitely in a middle space. You know, we're very, very connected to the modern world. But I think the piece of our lives that's involved with homesteading, you know, I keep Angora rabbits, I spin fur, I'm like a full-time crafter, I'm all in. That's the part that keeps me sane. So just for the folks out there listening who have that dream, you know, you don't have to be off grid or have 2,000 acres to find that connection. You can find it in the middle of the city.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I've talked to a lot of people about exactly that over the last year. There was a person I talked to who has an apartment, and she does all kinds of stuff that is homesteading skill stuff. And I was like, I'm so happy that I'm talking to you because I'm trying to make the point that homesteading is not about having 200 acres and pigs and cows. It's about being self-sufficient and being curious and wanting to be able to take care of yourself in a way that the store isn't the place you go to get the thing you need all the time.
Yes.
So thank you for saying that.
Absolutely.
But my point was that, you know, I am going to be very honest. I am highly drawn to pagan stuff, witchcraft things, anything to do with witches, partly because of my family background, but also just because it's part of it. It's very wrapped around nature. And Christmas time is very hard for me because everyone's all wound up about, you know, the birth of Jesus and da 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 and the light of the world. And that's fine. If that is your paradigm, do it up. I'm thrilled you have faith in something. Everyone needs to have faith in something if that's yours. Good. But a lot of people don't want to hear about Yule at all. And Yule is about the light of the world, but it's about the light, the sunlight coming back, not Jesus coming into the world. And there are so many tie-ins and so many parallels with both traditions, but it's really hard to get someone who's Christian to listen to why the traditions of Yule are important too. And I get so frustrated. Like, I blew off Christmas completely this year. I didn't even put up my tree. I was just like, I'm not in the mood. I don't want to do this. I'm frustrated with the whole thing and just didn't. And we had the nicest, quietest Christmas day ever. It was lovely. So sometimes I think you can just step away from all the trappings and just I don't know, reevaluate your take on what you believe in and then maybe change how you express it. I think that's what we tried to do this year.
Yes. We've definitely found our peace, and it has, I mean, it's taken almost 2 decades.
Mhm.
Um, but we have a really lovely mix. You know, so many of the Christmas traditions are built on a pagan history. And that's not new. That's not the first. You know, it happened with the Greeks and the Romans. It's happened this sort of continuation of ideas of God and goddess energy and the conflating of cultures across time. You know, even the ideas of shapeshifters. It's in a way, it's all happened before.
Yes.
So I try to approach Christmas with that understanding. You know, it is the light in the darkness. It's the importance of family and community in the coldest part of the year. It's allowing ourselves to slow down into winter as a verb. We don't really hibernate, but we do need to slow down in this time. And the celebration of light and the big family meals, you know, it can be a lot, and it can also bring us joy in the dark. You know, our tree is both Christian and pagan, and we have our own little Yule log every year, and that ritual is just ours.
Hmm. Yep. I got into a very short and almost heated discussion with a relative at one point because they were like, I don't know why you're talking about Yule. Yule is not real. And
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
and I just took a breath and I said, "Okay, you're clearly not interested in hearing about how I think about this. So I think we're done talking about this, and I'm done talking about Christmas too." And
My response in positions like that tends to be, well, you know, I'm interested in it historically.
Mhm.
Here are the historical facts in the time period, and you know, this is the way cultures flow together and meet each other, and that fascinates me. And winter light festivals have been around far longer than Christianity.
Yes. Yes. And it the whole thing would have been fine except that it was so clear that I was being shut down and shut up
Mm.
when
Yeah.
I am anyone who knows me knows that I am terribly curious about everything and that if I ask you something, I actually want to know. And so this person
It's the only way to be.
yeah, and this person had asked me an open-ended question and I was all excited to talk about what I knew and what I felt and why it was important, and they shut me down in the first two words.
Mm.
And I was hurt and I was frustrated. And so I guess the reason I even brought this up is that it's it's so important for humans to listen to each other and consider each other and not be so short-sighted and so boxed that you can't entertain someone else's perspective.
Yes. You know, and here's where all religions, I believe, somebody correct me if I'm missing something,
Uh-huh.
tie together at this idea of deep listening and compassion.
Uh-huh.
You know, our divinities are examples, they're ideas of our best selves and what we can be. And when we bring that into a daily practice, when we practice deep listening with somebody else who disagrees with us, sometimes we can still find a way to connect. Not always. It's got to be two ways. You've both got to be willing to converse. But when it does happen, that really is magic.
Mhm. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I've had it happen. And it is so amazing when you see the light bulb go on in someone's mind when they've actually heard you, understood you, and processed it and went, I've never thought of it that way. That's the part I love.
Same. Same, absolutely the same. I read tarot at events as well, and those conversations where you know you've really reached somebody are always the most powerful. And the most fascinating when they reach you in the same way.
Uh-huh. Yes. And I personally hate the word convert. I never try to convert anybody to my way of thinking or doing. I just try to be a good example of the good that comes from whatever it is that I think or I'm doing. And if someone wants to pick that mantle up and run with it, that's up to them. And so it's really hard for me when people are like, you should come to my church every Sunday and become a devout whatever their church is. And I'm like, that's not really an invitation to try. That's a mandate, and I'm not into a mandate. If you're inviting me because you think there's some value there for me, that's lovely. But if you're asking me to come because you need more members for your church, that's not cool. So it's hard. And I feel like we're getting really far afield, but this is all relevant because a lot of the people who are doing homesteading or cooking or crafting or whatever it is that they're doing, they are throwing their energy into something that they produce to benefit the people around them. And so it does tie in to everything we've been talking about.
Absolutely. It's that whole concept of right living, I guess in the Buddhist sense, that I think would be a foundation we could say most or all homesteaders really are attracted to and build a life on.
Yes, exactly. All right, Elm, I try to keep these to half an hour. This was very deep for a Tuesday morning, but I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and keep doing the good work.
Thank you.
All right, and have a great day.
You too.
Bye.